Welcome in to Red Corner, Blue Corner, right here on Stadium. Jake Butt made his way back from Southern California, and the man is very happy today, as he should be. Michigan, the winners of the Rose Bowl, getting ready to play Washington in the college football playoff national championship. Two-time All-American, Mackey Award winner, and my guy.
Job's not finished, JP.
I guess not.
I want my alma mater to have a national championship like you have a national championship. This is JP, the national champion and captain of the Ohio State Buckeyes, but it's good to be back with you, man.
Always good to be here. Make sure you scan that QR code right there on your screen. You get in the YouTube chat, submit us some content. We'll run it for you. Also, Instagram, it's been popping lately. You can follow us there on red_corner_blue corner.
I'm going to pop it off because I need your help here, okay? Because everyone wants to talk about Michael Penix Jr. We want to talk about Michael Penix Jr. We will talk about Michael Penix Jr., but let's flip the script a little bit because I want to ask you, how does Washington's defense stop J.J. McCarthy in this Michigan offense? And you being the defensive guy that you are, let's pull up some numbers. Let's compare the two defenses. Of course, we know Michigan's defense is top of the country in a number of different categories, as you see right there. Washington, not so much. 94th in yards per game. It's a lot of yards per game. Giving up a lot of touchdowns in that yards per play. I know that's a statistic you like.
I do.
If I'm not mistaken, right? 67. So what do you see with these numbers? And overall, what's your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a great defense, right? I think Michigan certainly got the edge there. And I want to give flowers to Michigan's defense, the way that they played against Alabama. There was nothing out there. I thought the front was very aggressive early on. The secondary was very sticky. And they're going to have that against a Washington offense very good. When we talk about this Washington defense, we have to admit this is not the greatest defense ever. And it's going to be a tough task against the Michigan offense that we saw. It's very creative, does a lot of things well. I also think that there was a point in the season where a lot of people wrote off the Washington defense because of some of the injuries that they had, and they had not played well. And the healthier this group has gotten, I think the more disruptive they have been. They have an edge rusher in Trice, who is a first-round pick more than likely, a safety who I think is the key of their defense in terms of the way that he can adjust things in the back end, in Dominique Hampton. Those guys are certainly going to have to show up. And the one thing I think that they have done well, the number is actually the same as what Michigan has done this season, is interceptions.
Yeah.
They have 16 on the year. Michigan, I believe, with the same number, 16 interceptions. They have 6 forced fumbles on the season as well. I think that is where their edge is going to have to be, because if they're playing a game where they can't force a turnover, I think Michigan offensively is going to be able to play the type of offense they want, where it's possess the football, run the football, and ultimately win the game.
That would be my biggest takeaway, is looking at Washington's defense. The big picture numbers are what they are, and we just showed you them. They're not great. They're definitely not scary, but they're an opportunistic defense. And if you play bad defense but you force turnovers, those turnovers are going to mask a lot of issues, particularly when you have Michael Penix Jr. under center. He's going to take advantage of those scoring opportunities. So I think one of the key things in this game, and Texas was able to do this, is running the football. Texas averaged about 6.5 yards per carry. What screwed them was the turnovers. So the good thing is for Michigan is they don't turn the ball over. Blake Corum does not have fumbles. JJ does not throw interceptions. Now, I say that, but I say this Alabama game last week, the fact that Michigan won this game benefits them because they can clean up some mistakes that will cost them if they play Washington. The muffed punts, the fumble on the flea flicker, I could go down the list, the muffed extra point. You cannot make these errors against a team like Washington. They score points at way too fast of a clip. You need to match that, and you need to do that while minimizing your own errors.
Yeah, and I think J.J. McCarthy even got away with one on the very first play of the game where, he throws that interception, the guy's heel is on the chalk, and all of a sudden that thing gets overturned. They cannot have plays like that against the Washington team. But you talked about this idea of a shootout, and Michigan, if they had to match points, would they be able to? I think that's why it's going to be really important to lean into Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards in this run game. And I think one of the things that they have done extremely well all year long, and I'm going to keep saying this about the Michigan offense, the run schemes were phenomenal. Me and you have talked about Blake Corum and what we think of him as a running back. And the one thing I will say that you always bring up, and it's true, is this guy is a student of the game. He knows how to set up the blocking schemes. He knows exactly where the ball is supposed to hit, and so he can fool you a little bit. On the last touchdown run that he had, Alabama had 2 defenders in one gap because it was a gap scheme with the puller coming over the top, and Blake Corum was patient enough to entice somebody to get a little bit stupid with their eyes, and now you got 2 guys in one gap. I think that will be a key for Michigan is to establish that run game as early as possible in this one, so you limit the amount of possessions that Washington can have.
Of course, is always true in football, and you guys know this, but they work together. And Michigan's not going to have a lot of times where they force a 3-and-out or they really stuff Washington's offense. They're not. But I can tell you what happens is if Michigan can force a 3-and-out or can first force an early in the drive punt, if you can then as an offense go have an 8-9 minute drive, like I can tell you this, an explosive offense, they're least dangerous when they're sitting on the sideline for extended periods of time. And there's a mental aspect to these games. When Washington knows, their entire sideline, their entire staff, their entire fan base knows, they win when Michael Penix is on the field and he's dicing up the defense. But if Michigan's defense can stop Washington early, and if they can start to extend drives and finish in touchdowns too, that's the other key. All of a sudden, the mental side of this, the pressure then goes on. They'll know, oh, wait, we have to respond. And how do they respond when they know they literally have to respond?
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, too, because it goes back to that conversation we were having yesterday when it comes to Washington offensively and third downs, where I don't think that's a great stat. We watch Washington go for fourth downs in situations where a lot of people won't in order to extend drives and to keep that high-power offense on the football field. So Michigan's going to have to be ready defensively for four-down football. But if they can succeed with that, my goodness, the ability to burn up the clock with Blake Corum and that run game will be important. Now, we've got a viewer comment we want to get in here from Jay Mommy. It says, who's the highest-ranked team on defense that Washington has played? Probably.
Meaning, wait, the Washington.
Who's the best defense Washington has played? I would probably say Oregon twice.
Yeah. Regardless, the fact is like nothing like Michigan.
Yeah.
I can tell you nothing like Michigan.
Yeah, no, they haven't faced a defense that good. Obviously, nobody has Michigan's the number one defense in the country. Flip side of that is Michigan defense is not seen in offense.
Yeah.
The best offense Michigan has probably seen is Ohio State, and there's been a lot of consternation about what that offense really is.
I know this. Okay, so like when you're facing a great quarterback, you'd love to have edge rushers, right? Like you'd love to have edge rushers come and hit him. But quarterbacks train now from the time they're 5 years old. Coaches come and they're trained to step up in the pocket and navigate edge rushers. It's a little bit more of a comfortable territory.
Right.
It's a different beast when that pass rush is coming from the inside.
Sure.
That's why a guy like Aaron Donald and Chris Jones are so valuable for these guys. Michigan, those interior guys, Chris Jenkins, Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, they were in Jalen Milroe's face, disruptive. It is very cloudy when you can't breathe because 300 pounds is right in your grill.
And they were pulling interior pressure too, Michigan was, and that was a really good point. Now, Mark Carmen's saying, I have a hard time seeing Washington running the ball effectively in this game. It gets us to our next point with Dillon Johnson, and he is ready to play. His x-rays came back negative. I mean, they need him in this football game because next two running backs on Washington's roster have a combined 74 carries, 376 yards, and a touchdown all year. Now, I want to say that he is important, but the other thing that I saw Michael Penix Jr. do against Texas that he hadn't really done since the Indiana days was running the rock. So if Dillon Johnson can go, do you think between him and Michael Penix Jr., they can generate a semblance of a run game that deserves respect?
Just to your point real quick, did it kind of remind you of C.J. Stroud, who didn't run and then versus Georgia?
Georgia, he decided he was going to use his legs.
You're not a runner, but you'll run when it's there, right? Yep. And that's, that's going to be a key here. So, yeah, I mean, Dillon Johnson, listen, like, first off, okay, he's going to play. How healthy is he? That's another question. It's something we've talked about with Blake this year, Travion Henderson. There's a difference between cleared to play and being a true difference maker. So then I would go and say, okay, well, to me, yes, him playing is great, but I know Washington wins because of Michael Penix Jr. in the passing game. So Michigan's defense is going to commit resources to stopping that. But the benefit to Michigan's defense is it's so complementary. Like they're going to send a blitz, a pass blitz, but they're gap disciplined, so they're not going to be out of position. That's going to mean they're in position to stop the run. It's going to take all 11 guys for both teams. If Michigan can stop the run, and Penix is consistently in third and long situations, that does play to Michigan's hand.
Okay, so to answer the question from earlier, the best defense statistically that Washington faced this year was Utah. I believe they're number 13 nationally, total defense. Washington was able to put up 35 points on Utah. Utah also has a very different athlete than I think Michigan is working with, so we have to factor that in there.
That's a different You know, it's an exponential thing, I would say, like 1, 2, 3, and then you start to get up there. Like that's not. I don't even want to say the same.
All right, you ready?
ASU's held them to 15 points.
Well.
A blind squirrel finds a nut every now and then, though. I'm not going to throw that game out. You're not going to see Washington's offense when they played Arizona State, so that's all good. All right, well, coming up, we have one of your – we got to go to your vault, right? One of your former teammates, JP's former teammates, takes a blowtorch to Ryan Day. How hot is his seat? We will discuss that next.
got to talk to some of our bowl picks here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. And here are the results. Staff, and they did not start off very well at all, ended up winning it, total of 67 points. you got a similar record, less points than the staff. Sam Brief, our guy, he started off hot and finished middle of the road. Brooke did a solid job. We don't have to talk about who's sitting there in last.
First off, I just want to say, I'll be the first to admit, staff, we were taking some laps on him early.
We were
taking some laps on him early. Didn't look good. Looked like Sam was good. Things can change in this sport. But we won't talk about who's last now. We won't.
Yeah, we don't need to talk
We'll move
about
on.
that. I took some risks.
I got you.
You know, some of these teams weren't even invested in their bowl games anyway. It's meaningless to them.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
I mean, Hugh Freeze was saying that he didn't even start game planning until the week of. Like, he had other things to worry about.
Gosh.
So I really don't give a damn.
It's a crapshoot. It's a crapshoot. So we promised you Tyvis Powell's interview, right? So Tyvis Powell, he's a former Buckeye safety and national champion. He recently appeared on the Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and this is what he had to say about Buckeye head coach Ryan Day.
Ryan Day, the seat is on fire. The seat is on fire.
Oh, that's a given.
What I would tell you is what you need to do. I will give you one more season. This is it, one more season. But there has to be some changes made on your coaching staff, my brother, because for many years you have went out there and promoted guys that don't deserve it. You got coaches in there that really can't coach, that's really just collecting the paycheck. You have to cut that baggage and get guys in there that got football minds that's going to dedicate themselves to getting this program back to where it's at. Let the buddy stuff go. Yes, they're going to be mad at you. You're supposed to be your boy. You got to fire your boy. They always tell you never hire your friends or family. Get rid of both of them. Anybody that's on the staff that you feel like is not helping these kids, because at the end of the day, that's what it's about, developing these kids and helping these kids get to where they got to get.
Okay, so JP, Tyvis Powell is a former teammate of yours, which means you obviously both played at Ohio State. And I'd like to, I know you've done some podcasts. You got your finger on this one. Is this how a lot of former Ohio State football players feel?
Tyvis is not only a former teammate of mine, he's one of my best friends in this entire world. I love that guy to death. One of his daughters is my goddaughter. We talk 4 or 5 times a week. A lot of our conversations have been very similar to what he said on that show. And other conversations I've had with other former players, in particular, ones that played when Urban was the coach there, feel a similar way. Ryan Day, we are not ready to fire him right now, but certainly that seat is very hot. You are judged at Ohio State based off the results of a very few games, because you're going to win a majority of the games off of talent alone. But when you play the Penn States of the world, when you play the Michigans of the world, not being in a Big Ten championship, not making the playoff, losing the way that they did to Missouri, people are going to start asking questions about what's going on in your program. People did it with Urban a little bit. The urgency wasn't nearly as high because nobody was ready to fire a coach that had won a national title. But when Billy Davis was on that staff, and when Ed Warner was calling plays, and when Tim Beck was the offensive coordinator, when they lost 31-0 to Clemson, very similar conversations were happening in Columbus. Now, we didn't play the full clip, but there's a part of that clip where they push in to say, Tyvis, who are some of the guys that need to be examined? He mentions the offensive line coach, Justin Fry. I'm not there on Justin Fry quite yet, because the offensive line is a position where guys have to develop. It takes a while, usually veteran players out there, and he's dealing with a room where I think the recruiting was down way before he got there. I think he needs some more time, because I do think he's a very good coach. Corey Dennis, a quarterback coach, his name popped up. This is supposed to be a quarterback-driven program. Kyle McCord left. Devin Brown didn't see him a ton. He's been hurt, but he didn't necessarily look great. Lincoln Kienholt's a freshman, and he's certainly not the answer. You're probably not playing Aaron Olin. They're looking at the state of that room and asking questions. Another name that popped up that people don't want to hear, Brian Hartline, and the development in that room. You can't tell me you've got a stockpile of some of the best wide receiver recruits in the country, and you're only playing 3 guys. You can't tell me that Julian Fleming was on that roster for many years, and he's a guy who caught no touchdown passes this year. And then finally, another one people didn't want to hear was Larry Johnson. But let's be completely clear about that defensive line. Very talented players on that line, high recruits. They have not generated the numbers that they need to up front. They are not putting out the first rounders like we've seen with Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, and Chase Young. Yeah. And so I'm not saying that any or all of these people need to be fired. It's not my job to do that. What I am saying is that a hard conversation needs to happen with every single one of them. And if I'm Ryan Day, I am applying pressure until I feel pain. And wherever that pain point is, I'm leaning in as hard as I can to find the solution.
Here's one thing, because you made a lot of great points there where, look, it's not time to fire Ryan Day, but you better damn be sure that there's urgency in the building, because that tough conversation is closer than it's ever been. And the absolute need to win, particularly against Michigan next year, has probably never been of more importance. And one thing that Tyvis said that stood out, he's like, we got to put this buddy stuff to the side, this feeling good. And it makes me think, like, this is the harsh truth that probably a lot of people don't understand that are outside the program, outside football, is, you know, you have to earn the right to be joyful and happy. Frankly, you get to be happy for about 24 hours, maybe 12 hours. You have the opportunity to be happy for about 12 hours, 12 times a season.
Yeah.
You know, seriously.
Yep.
And then the rest of the week, you're going to be anxious. You're going to be uncomfortable.
100%.
You're going to be sleeping at night wondering, did I do enough? And even if you did enough, it won't be enough. And then maybe you get 12 hours of peace and freedom. And guess what? As soon as the season's over, it's time to start recruiting again. You get into this business understanding that, and that's why you get paid the big bucks. But it does feel like, you know, in Columbus, you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. I'm sorry, this is not the time to be comfortable right now, and that's perfectly fine.
It's I want to read this comment here from South Phoenix Rising. It says, as a Michigan fan, I never want Crying Day to leave. He is a new Cooper. And it's interesting, when Jim Harbaugh took that contract where it was reduced or whatever the case was, people were like, I never want Jim Harbaugh to leave. And you see how quickly things turn there. And the point that I'm trying to make with that is sometimes it takes you getting to a low point for the introspection to happen and for the changes to come. And for you to really say, you know what, screw this. I'm going to get in my bag, and guys aren't going to like being around here. When I played at Ohio State, I loved being a part of that program. I hated being inside the facility because Urban made me anxious 24/7. My stomach was in knots constantly because I didn't know if I was going to have a job the next day. And I started at Ohio State for 3 years in the back of my mind thinking that my job was gone the next day if I didn't make every single play in practice and in the game. And it's a tough way to be, and I totally understand that. But sometimes you got to be like that. And maybe it only takes a year of really doing that for guys to understand and to wake up and to feel it. And then it becomes a culture where we say, you know what, we're going to embrace all of this kind of stuff. And I think there was a similar turn that had to happen in Ann Arbor for them to get to a point where it's 3 straight playoff appearances and now a national title appearance after people all over were saying, oh man, Jim Harbaugh should never leave because all we're going to do is beat him if he's a Michigan coach.
I've heard a phrase by some great fighters say, hey man, it took a lot of violence for me to be this peaceful. Like, both are true, right? It's like, man, listen, you cannot be, what, do you think Michigan's comfortable? I hope to God they're not comfortable this week feeling they did enough and this is good enough. I hope they're damn uncomfortable.
Yes.
And then for 48 hours after the national title game, they can go on and be comfortable into the offseason.
You know, it's funny you talk about the offseason too. Like, they said after Urban won the second title, he was so on edge. And the first thing he wanted to do when he got in the locker room was call recruits because he felt like the job wasn't done. And after the second one, he couldn't even catch the breath because he was trying to get the third one. And that is what you kind of have to be. And it sucks. It's not a great way to live. You know what else sucks? Losing. I hate losing too. I would rather be that miserable than to lose. And that's a decision that some people
Thank God
have to
the
make.
pain of losing is so painful that it drives you to do that.
I mean, that's just the way that I feel right there. All right, we're going to take one final break right here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. But on the other side, we're going to be joined by our friends from Rivals Down South, and we'll try to fix a broken bowl system. That's coming up. Getting ready to wrap it up over here on Red Corner, Blue Corner. Jake Butt joining me. I'm Joshua Perry. We got our guys from Rivals Down South joining the show. We got T-Bob Hebert and SEC Mike. And I want to throw up a quote here from Kirby Smart because he had a lot of things to say after Georgia demolished Florida State over the weekend. He said people need to see what happened tonight and they need to fix this. People got to decide what they want and what they really want to get out of this because it's unfortunate those kids on that sideline had to play in that game and didn't have their full arsenal. It affected the game 100%. And I think Kirby is the voice of many of us right now when it comes to the current bowl system and really the college football calendar. And Hugh Freeze had what I thought was a very intriguing take too. And some people took it as him throwing his staff under the bus. But if you're really listening to what he said, it makes a lot of sense. As he said he didn't start game planning for his bowl game really until the week of because he's worried about evaluating his program. He's trying to wrap up a recruiting class. There are more urgent things to some of these coaches than what everybody wants to call an exhibition or what everybody wants to call a meaningless game. What is the proper fix for the current bowl setup? Jake, I'll start with you.
I think I actually have a pretty good solution here because I think maybe it's the thing you resist that you need the most, where it's like, hey, we can't do pay for play. What if we do exactly that? Like, okay, let's just think about actions follow incentives in this case. You need the best quarterbacks to play. Like Jay Daniels sits out for LSU, for example. It's better for the bowl game. It's better for the TV product. It's better for the advertisers. It's better for everybody involved if he plays. So why not say, Jaden, we're going to give you $300,000 to play, and if you hit 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, we're going to have incentive bonus. If you hit 300 yards, we're going to give you $150K. You hit 3 touchdowns, we'll give you another $150K. So it's all in $600K for the number 1 star to play in a bowl game. Does that seem like a fair cost? Would that get him to play? Sign a contract. You have got to play in this bowl game. I mean, does that pay? And then the bowl game pay for the insurance as well? Does that seem like a reasonable
Look,
presentation
I'm
to this?
not convinced. I mean, but hold on now. Are guys not being paid to play in these games already? Like,
No,
I'm already kind of convinced there's probably deals out there where there is language in I don't know this for sure, but like, I think it's kind of crazy to think that there's not already some deals out there where guys probably have language in the contract that say you'll get X amount if you play in the bowl game.
They're
and
not
the Jaden
supposed
Daniels
to do
point
that
is
under the current NIL rules. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's pretty clear
I want
that
explicit language.
it's not supposed to be tied to playing or performance.
so
Yeah,
I would also say, oh, go ahead, Mike.
I'll take it a step further. I think Jake's 100% right, but instead of individual, we all know these bowls, these are money grabs outside of the playoffs. So what I want to see, get these players, cut them in. I mean, the bowl game Kirby was talking about, the Capital One Orange Bowl,
Yep.
$25 million sponsorship deal annually.
Right.
Cut in the players, and the winning team, I think they get a bigger percentage, maybe twice the percentage of the losing team. That way, everybody's in there, everybody's fighting, everybody wants to play, and Jaden Daniels could do it for the rest of his teammates that are not making the hundreds of thousands of dollars that he probably is at LSU.
Yeah, I feel like the onus should be on the bowls to have to pony up because ultimately it's their product that they want to make sure they're paying enough money for it to be prominent. They want to make sure the prominent players are in there. So I don't necessarily disagree with that. T-Bob, you haven't had a lot of time to get in, so let's hear your thoughts.
Well, and welcome into Rivals Down South here, guys. But okay, so I have a few thoughts here. First off, what Kirby's saying sounds good, but there's no real solution attached. And when you're specifically looking at Florida State, the problem are simply the opt-outs, right? And if you do want something to fix, not the opt-outs, it's the transfers, right? You probably need to change the calendar so that transfers can remain on the team till after bowl season. How do you do that when guys want to roll in January? I don't exactly know, but like that's changeable, that's fixable. But the reason why Florida State wasn't Florida State was because they got screwed. They got dealt an injustice, like a grievous necrotic wound that I don't know if the program will ever recover from. Quite frankly, that's how deep I think this thing's going to be felt and the echoes of it. But, like, in theory, that portion should at least be fixed with the 12-team playoff. Here's my deal, dude. I don't think bowl games are broken. I don't think they are, dude. I think they're fine. I think they're exactly evolving into whatever they need to be. Like, the guys who play want to play. If you're a backup and the starter leaves to go be in the NFL, Well, you're freaking hyped because you've been working your ass off for years, and you now finally get to see the field. And even the Jaden Daniels thing is interesting because I love Jaden Daniels. I would never say no to Jaden Daniels playing another game in an LSU uniform. But quite honestly, and I'm sure Mike can speak to this dude with Yamaliava, it was really nice to get a little tantalizing preview of the future. I mean, we're going to talk about it later in the show today. Like, it was the perfect opportunity for the quarterback in waiting to get that practice with the first team and then get to try to show up on a big stage. Now, I see you readjusting there, Joshua. What you got?
Yeah, I struggle with it a ton because me, you, and Jake played in an era where there were New Year's Six bowl games and there was one national championship game, and I don't recall anybody opting out of any of those games because they were unimportant to them. And now because it expanded to a 4-team playoff, all of a sudden dudes are like, well, the Orange Bowl means nothing. Does it not mean anything less than what it meant before when it was the Orange Bowl and then the BCS national championship game? Like, that's the part where I feel like, first off, people in our job have done a really bad job because we have allowed that narrative to get out there because some of us are saying it, and I just don't believe it's true. And nothing materially changed to me. But what changed outside of a couple of semifinal games? Because you're not competing for a
championship
They never were, and people still played in the bowl games.
In the past, it felt more like a championship. Really, when we're talking about bowl games that don't matter, if we're being honest, guys, Joshua's right. There's 2 games we're talking about. It's the New Year's 6 games that aren't the playoff games. Every other one people care about. Look at how freaking hyped Kansas State was to win the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Like, go down the list. Look at how hyped Western Kentucky was to come back and win, right? Like, everybody else does give a damn about ending their season with a win and has a ton of fun doing it. It's just that like we had these uber prestigious bowls, and now every year 2 of them lose luster, and because they have the biggest and best players on them, but those players have the brightest NFL futures, they tend to leave because what does it mean to them when they need to go make money and want to avoid injury risk?
Right, but in 2013, when I was playing in an Orange Bowl, we lost the Big Ten championship, lost the opportunity to go to a national title when we lost that game. And we had an Orange Bowl, which we ended up losing, and our guys were down there in Miami partying. But everybody was out there. Ryan Shazier was lined up right next to me. First-round linebacker. There wasn't this idea that we're not going to play in the game because it doesn't mean anything anymore. It was pretty much, we got one final ride. Let's go out there and have some fun. Whether we win or lose.
More though. You used to get rings for that stuff.
We never got a ring for a New Year's Six game because Urban didn't believe in that. But that's neither.
Yeah, I guess we didn't know. We didn't either, to be fair.
Before the 4-team playoffs, though, it was like the national championship, and then it felt like those New Year's Six were like almost like their own national championship.
Yes.
And then with the 4-team playoff, it was like it created a very. Like, no, you can't really claim that because now we gave the opportunity for 4 teams to get in there. And if you aren't one of the 4, are you really that good? Like that's exactly. Kind of what we've all like collectively agreed upon. You know, obviously, guys, I got injured in my bowl game, and you know, Jalen Smith was the year before.
And I played in that game. I was lined up on the same field as him.
Jalen Smith, right?
Jalen Smith, yeah.
What did you feel as a player? Did you think of the ramifications in the moment when that happened?
I mean, I think we all kind of had a collective, oh man, this is not a great moment. We also finished the football game and everybody played hard. I think Joey Bosa might have got a targeting call on purpose so he could get out of there without looking like he wasn't going to play the rest of the football game. But the idea that, like, Joey did play in that game and Jalen Smith did play in that game. We had a bunch of guys who were first-round picks, Ezekiel Elliott, Eli Apple, Taylor Decker, who was the guy who blocked Jalen Smith at the end of that play where he tore his knee up. We all played in that football game, won it, and then T-Bob, we didn't get a damn ring because Urban said it wasn't a national title. But we still wanted to play it for the pride of the game.
But Jake, what do you think, Jake? Because I mean, you suffered this. Like, you actually went through it. Like,
yeah,
was it worth it?
To me, it's not. That's not even the question for me. Like, it was just a matter of like value. Like, I you know, my team elected me captain that year, and like I was always good. It was never even a thought in my mind to not play. But like, my values are going to be different from the next one. That doesn't mean mine are right or wrong. But I do think we have to play into like what people are incentivized by, and that's where I say like, hey, you know, to SEC Mike's point, like, dude. a reason to play would be to make a $500,000 bonus. That's the reason the NBA went to an in-season tournament. That's the reason we pay the winning team in the Pro Bowl. Like there's plenty of examples of how we've incentivized the behavior we want. And I just think that's the way we have to go forward. If you talk about a $25 million advertising bowl, that's a lot of money. I think there's one more thing I want to add is the transfer portal should move past the season. And Ohio State is so much better off if Kyle McCord plays in that game and you could pay him and then he could transfer after.
The other thing that needs to happen, too, is the early signing period has to go away. And this is a problem for me on a million different levels. But the idea that you are trying to firm up your recruiting class, and some of these people are receiving the letters of intent at the bowl site for the game they're preparing for. That is the dumbest thing. So you're telling me that during the NFL playoffs, they're also going to do free agency? How does that even sound?
No, it's so you're right. So there are things to fix with the calendar. I just do want to push back a little bit against bowl games not mattering, because I watched a lot of bowl games this year where it really felt like it meant a lot to that team. It meant a lot to LSU to win. It meant a lot to Tennessee to win, Kansas State, like all these teams. It's just these big ones. Yeah, maybe
and
not
I'll give you the flip side
Josh.
of that is they do matter, and you can ask people on the losing side of these games. Ask Ohio State fans how much that Cotton Bowl mattered, because before it wasn't a big deal, but now you lose that one, and all of a sudden it's a huge deal. So I agree with you that the games matter, but people have allowed themselves to say that they don't, and I can't stand that.
Thank y'all so much for joining us. That's the Red Corner, Blue Corner boys, Joshua Perry, Jake Butt. Thank you so much, man. And we'll see y'all tomorrow. Now it's time for me and SC Mike. And speaking of bowl games, it doesn't matter if you get it done in the regular season if you can't win in the postseason, boys. But after gravediggering my way to a regular season win with a great final week, 9-2 in our bowl picks, beating out Vern Funquist, beating out SEC Mike, one game behind. Mike, what would you like to say to your champion?
I mean, are you Irish or something? Because this is nothing but luck. I don't know how in the world you did. You switched about half your picks, so I don't know if we're going with your first option, your second option, but congrats to the winner for sure.
Look, man, and also, so sorry, I'm very excited here, a little overwhelmed. One of the best parts about this bowl season, though, is the fact that, like we just kind of talked about, for guys like me and you, you're a Tennessee fan, I follow LSU mainly, you got peeks into the future. For me, it was Garrett Nussmeier. For you, is Nico Iamaleava, and he was fantastic against Iowa. You know, that was a really weird spot, a sketchy spot. I mean, this is a Hawkeye defense that is one of the most tenacious in the entire country. And if you've got a guy who's making their first start, you're like, I don't know how this is going to work out. I mean, Iamaleava could not have turned in a more exciting performance. Ran for 3 scores, threw for another one, Citrus Bowl MVP. Mike, the hype train has to be out of control in Knoxville right now.
Oh, preseason top 10, baby, all because of Nico. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, you got to realize this is a true freshman, like you said, going up against an allegedly an elite defense. I question how elite Iowa really is, but they're statistically they were elite. But one thing that I really had my eye on, T-Bop, Tennessee. Last year, when they won 11 games, they were number 1 in the country, red zone touchdown percentage. This season, 122nd in the country, scoring touchdowns in the red zone. So I really wanted to see, how did Nico look in the red zone? Went down the 4 trips, 4 touchdowns. All Nico, all day. So that's how you evaluate a quarterback, how good they really are. And I think the biggest compliment you could give a freshman is he didn't look like a freshman. He looked in complete command.
And then so you flip that over to LSU, and Garrett Nussmeier ends up throwing for 395 and 3 touchdowns against a Wisconsin team that I would not say that that's a very good team, right? Like Iowa's defense, much more impressive what Iamaleava was able to do. But one thing I did love about Nussmeier is the stats are great. 395, that's a ton. Like that's great. But it's the situational moments you saw from Nussmeier that should excite you if you're an LSU fan, because twice in that game, you were down 14 points, including being down 28-14 to start the second half. With 6 minutes left, you get the ball back, losing by 3, and you're staring down 98 yards of field to go. What does Nussmeier do? Drives him down, scores the game-winning touchdown, and then somehow the LSU defense did not F it up for once this season, and you come away with the win. So as exciting as it was just how he played from a raw number standpoint, it is the situational success, much like you're referencing with the Amilava and the red zone, that I think excites you. But this is one of the great parts about bowl games, because now you enter the offseason with all this momentum and you're fired up. And then you have like Oklahoma and Jackson Arnold. Well, even though Arizona's a much better team than these other two opponents, you don't really know what you got out of Arnold right now. You got the new O-line. The defense didn't look great for Oklahoma. So are bowl games different? Yes, but they're not bad. Like, they're still a ton of fun. And if the situation is correct, you get fascinating insight into what your program may be the following season. So congratulations, Mike. I mean, can you only imagine? Are you bummed you didn't get to watch Joe Milton one last time?
I think Tennessee would have won 11 games had Nico started the entire season. That's the only thing that's holding me back all off season. What could have been SEC champs, playoff champs, would have won it all with Nico.
All right, still to come here on Rivals Down South. Let's discuss the rise of the Rebel Alliance and LSU making some major coaching changes, cleaning house, if you will. Coming up next. What's going on, y'all? Welcome back to Rivals Down South. YouTube.com/Watch Stadium. If you want to get involved in the chat. So our own SEC Mike tweeting out his 2024 SEC way too early power rankings. Georgia 1, Ole Miss 2, Alabama 3, Mizzou 4, Texas 5, Tennessee. Where the hell's LSU? Whatever. That's not the point. The point is Lane Kiffin quote tweets Mike with the emojis rat and poison. Obviously trying to fight against the hype the same way that his former mentor Nick Saban does. Mike, does Lane like you? Does Lane like you? Does he listen? Like, why is Lane Kiffin always interacting with everything you do?
Well, I think because all this hype is warranted, and like you said, it's the rat poison. I think Ole Miss, with everything they've done, bringing players back, getting in the portal, whipping the hell out of Penn State, I think all this is warranted, and they should be looked to be. I've gone, T-Bob, from playoff contender to national championship contender. But what does that do to Lane Whiffen Kiffin, as I like to call him, aside from Penn State, aside from LSU, which didn't field a defense this year, can't win a big game. Now the pressure is squarely on his shoulders. If they don't win 10 games, I mean, I think next year is a complete failure.
Okay. Well, okay. I agree with that last statement. You're doing a lot of heavy lifting, just throwing out the big wins. Like, eventually you do have to give credit to Whiffen Kiffin for a big win. Like, he got a couple of them. They were great. I mean, Mizzou did lose to LSU at home, and Penn State did beat a lot of good teams, whatever. I do agree with you, though. Ole Miss should win 10 games. Ole Miss should be a member of the 12-team playoff. If everything goes right, I think they can become a true national title contender. I still find that a bit hard to believe, though that bowl game showed me a lot, because one of the remaining questions I had was, are they going to be tough enough? And when you out-tough Penn State, like, I can see you out-skilling Penn State, but when you out-tough Penn State, that goes a long way towards making me believe in you. But something that Jake Hester's been talking a lot about, Mike, and I find to be very interesting with this team, is it's not just the Princely Umanmielans and the Juice Wells and everybody that they're adding, but it's, again, who they're bringing back. Dart, Judkins, Trey Harris. Like, and you're bringing guys back that now have belief, right? That have seen, oh, no, we can win on the highest level. We can beat top 10 teams. And we can beat them in multiple ways, not just through getting in a shootout and outscoring them. Like, we can control the line of scrimmage. We can beat down tough teams with our own toughness. And so you have a combination of returning talent, new talent, and belief that absolutely should make them a playoff team next year. Now.
Right. But they've never had the expectations that they're going to have next season.
True.
Like I said, I mean, it's playoff or bust for Ole Miss. How will they handle that?
So, if we want to bring back up those rankings, you don't have to, but I couldn't help but notice, Mike, the LSU Tigers. I mean, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I can't even count that high. I went to LSU, Mike. Relax. Number 8 behind Jackson. Now, did the fact, in case you missed it today, the massive news out of Baton Rouge is that Brian Kelly made it official. The Purple Wedding is here, completely cleaned house. And not just Matt House, the entire defensive staff out at LSU. Mike, does this bump LSU up in your SEC power rankings at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So I put this out before that news, but I just can't get it out of my head. Someone put the parallel, Dan Mullen's last great Florida team, dynamic on offense, and just god-awful on defense. Sound familiar, T-Bob? And with all these players going to the pros on the offensive side of the ball, the only way you're going to recapture that magic is if the defense takes a significant step up, because the offense is not going to be as good. I don't care how good Garrett Nussmeier is, and he could be elite. It's not going to be as good as it was this last season. And, oh, by the way, they got to replace the offensive coordinator too. So the fact that they have trashed the defensive staff is what they had to do. I got a little bit more faith in LSU, but it has got to be a top 25 unit next season if LSU is going to win 10 games again. And I don't know if I have the confidence. They're taking steps in the right direction, but I'm not quite there yet.
I think one thing that has been abundantly clear is these players really disliked Matt House. I mean, there was a video that went viral over the weekend where Mekhi Wingo is on the field and House is trying to dap him up. He won't make eye contact. He's looking away, and he's telling his boys, like, I'm gone. I'm out of here. Harold Perkins tweeted today, it ain't fun when the rabbit got the gun. And then just before the show started, Braden Swinson, who is one of their best defenders, put on Instagram on his story a video of him kicking rocks, literally telling Matt House to kick rocks. So it was untenable. I think there's big news down the way, Mike. I've said it plenty. None of this is secret. I think, although these things can go awry in the last minute, I think LSU is going to snatch Bo Davis away to be their D-line coach from Texas, a la how they snatched Cortez Hankton away from Georgia at wide receiver a couple years ago. You saw what that's done to the two teams. And I would not be surprised at all if they bring back what many coin is the godfather of DBU, Corey Raymond, to try to fix that LSU secondary, which has completely lost its way. So although there's blood in the streets and there's a level of human empathy there, and I feel badly for men losing their job, people are celebrating the purple wedding right now in Baton Rouge. All right, still to come. Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Well, and it's just a pivotal offseason for Brian Kelly. Year 3. This is supposed to be the year that you win it all at LSU, not the year that we're wondering if you're fit for this conference.
Coming up next, Brock Bowers decided to take his talents to the league. No surprise there, but how much does this affect Georgia? And is he the greatest tight end in the history of the SEC? Breaking it down next here on Rivals Down South. And y'all, welcome back. Rivals Down South here on Stadium. Hope everyone's having an excellent day. Georgia fans maybe not having the best day, Mike. Both Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey declaring that they will be taking their talents to Sunday. When you think about Bowers from a legacy standpoint, kind of derailed this last year due to injury, but where would you rank Brock Bowers among the best tight ends in SEC history?
Yeah, when he declared, I mean, that's kind of right where I went, T-Bob, and I don't think it's debatable. I think he's the best tight end that I've ever covered in the SEC. They never lost a regular season game. Damn near won 3 national championships with Bauer theirs. And I was been told, T-Bob, that I'll practice. You know, they put in these GPS trackers on all these guys. Literally never goes below top speed in practice, and I think that's a credit to why he's such a good player on Saturdays. He just gave it his all his entire time. He was the best player on that team as a true freshman. He was the best player for 3 years.
He was fantastic. Are you at all, obviously, and you know who I really feel bad for? Oscar Delp. Because every freaking time Oscar Delp makes a play, all the announcers say is like, oh, look at Delp doing his best Barrett impression. Like, at a certain point, just give Oscar Delp credit alone for making a play. Anyway, losing those weapons.
And they got another guy, Lawson Lucky, tight end, who may be better than Oscar Delp. So I think they're going to be fine. But to your point, it may be a long offseason for Oscar Delp because he may be the second best tight end once again.
Yeah, maybe a little unlucky for Lucky having to follow up this guy. I mean, hey, come on, dude. I'll be here all week, literally, on Stadium. Rivals, come hang out. Me, SEC Mike, breaking it all down as the college football news cycle remains insane. Caden Salter to Auburn? I don't know. We'll see. Y'all have a great day. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.